Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings here on Now TV. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. If you are just recently joining me here on Morning Musings and Now TV, I want to thank you so very much. And I want to encourage you and invite you to please subscribe to my channel. Um, I appreciate it so very much. And obviously, it doesn't cost you anything. And I'm hearing from more and more people all of the time who are really beginning to tap into the narrative of fulfilled prophecy, fulfilled eschatology. In many ways, ladies and gentlemen, eschatology is what has been called by some scholars the last frontier of Christian theology. And what these scholars have mean by that is that although down through time, the Christian church has discussed, argued, even debated eschatology, the fact remains that insofar as systematic studies of eschatology, that has just virtually never been done. And there arose controversies about eschatology, even in the pages of the New Testament. What do you mean, Don? Well, by that I mean this. There were some who were saying in Romans chapter 11 that God had already cast off Israel. Well, what that means is Israel's last days had already come and gone. As a corollary to that, I believe it's a direct corollary to that, some were saying the day of the Lord had already come, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Some were saying the resurrection had already taken place, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 18. And by the way, folks, look, when someone tries to refute covenant eschatology today by appealing to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and by appealing to 2 Timothy chapter 2 and saying, see, Paul dealt with full preterism as a heresy in the first century. No, he was not. Because the reality is that all prophecy was to be fulfilled in the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. That's what he said, Luke chapter 21 and 22. Now, what that means is, since all prophecy, including the prophecies of the judgment, the parousia, the resurrection, the kingdom, the new creation, etc., since those are all Old Testament prophecies, and since, as I develop extensively in this book, and by the way, it's on special this month, there's not much time left. Okay, these two books, if you purchase them separately, they would cost you over right at $48. For the rest of this month, December 2024, U.S. orders only, your total delivered price is $30. That's going to save you almost $20. Now, in this book, I demonstrate that the first century temple is the temple that was the focus of eschatological end-time prophecy. In this book, I demonstrate, as I've already just suggested, that Jesus said, Luke chapter 21, verse 22, that in the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, in the destruction of that temple, these be the days of vengeance in which all things that are written must be fulfilled. Now, look, I have people tell me all the time, just recently on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Someone objected and they said, Don, what you're missing here is that all that Jesus was saying in Luke chapter 21 and verse 22 is that all things written in the Old Testament would be fulfilled in AD 70. Well, I agree with that. But once again, as I point out in this particular book, every constituent element of eschatology. Once again, coming of the Lord, judgment, resurrection, kingdom, new creation. Every single one of those constituent elements is directly, inseparably, inextricably bound up with the time of the judgment of Jerusalem in AD 70. And I've just got tons of documentation in that book. So anyway, the rest of this month of December 2024, U.S. orders only, total delivered price, $30. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, click on the banner up top, order the book. You'll be glad that you did. So the point that I'm making here is that so many people are unaware of the fact that eschatology was misunderstood even in the first century. I mean, if you're going to say 2,000 years ago, the coming of the Lord resurrection, Israel's history is over and done, then you got to come up with a different eschatology. Folks, this was in approximately 50 AD for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. It was approximately 57 AD for Romans chapter 11. It was approximately the 62, 63, 64 maybe for 2 Timothy chapter 2. So when people seem to say and when people claim, oh, eschatology's been worked out. Really? They didn't have it worked out in the first century. There was confusion and error regarding eschatology in the first century. So I'm spending so much time developing how we today, 2,000 years removed from the first century, 2,000 years removed from the time that Jesus said all things would be fulfilled, 2,000 years removed from the time when Peter said, the time has come for the judgment of the living and the dead to occur. We're 2,000 years removed from the time in which James said, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. The coming of the Lord has drawn near. The judge is standing right at the door. James chapter 5, 6-9. Folks, when Jesus and the New Testament writers said that the end of the age, the coming of the Lord, judgment, resurrection, when the New Testament writers followed suit with Jesus in saying those things were imminent 2,000 years ago, then today's church, broadly speaking, has a severe problem in saying, oh no, it hasn't happened. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the challenge of Christ. For well over 2 years now, I've been sharing with you the challenge of Christ. Jesus said, if I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me. Do not believe me for my word's sake, believe me for my works. Even though you don't believe me, believe the works that my Father is in me and I in him. And yet 99%, that number's growing or diminishing. 99% of all Christians today say, well, I know it seems like he said it was going to be back then, but we know it didn't. And the Jew, the Muslim, the agnostic, the atheist all say, folks, Christians, you got to face it. Your Jesus lied. Your Jesus failed. Remember, just recently, I had a formal YouTube debate with Dr. Richard Carrier, world-renowned scholar, who said Jesus lied and Jesus failed. Earlier this year, I had a debate with a former Christian who is now an atheist because he read the scriptures, just like the great majority of Christians today too, as a prediction of Jesus' literal, physical, bodily, visible coming of the Lord out of heaven, as I like to say, as a 5'5" Jewish man. Because he had the wrong concept of eschatology, a wrong concept about the nature of the coming of the Lord, because it didn't happen in the time frame in which this man, Mark Smith was his name, could read with his own eyes on the pages of the Bible, and he knew that idea, that concept of the nature of the coming of the Lord, didn't happen when the scripture says it was supposed to have. He became an atheist. And if you and I are not equipped today to prove, number one, Jesus never said he was going to come back in a physical body at the end of time. Jesus never said he was going to come back at the end of the endless Christian age. He said the Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels. What did he say? Wait a minute. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father, which means, as I've been demonstrating, he was going to come in the same way his Father had come many times before. And he said, which is our text for the day, John chapter 5, 21 and following, which is, it just conflates and dovetails so beautifully with Matthew 16, 27 and 28. Jesus said, "From henceforth, the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all men might honor the Son in the same way that they honor the Father." The Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do, he will do likewise. Now, folks, you just absolutely got to catch the power of this text in harmony and in conflation with Matthew 16. Now, let me take just a real quick trip back to Matthew 16, 27, 28. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels and shall reward every man according to his works. Now, let me ask you a question. When Jesus said he shall reward every man according to his works, is that judgment? Well, if you're going to judge every man according to his work, yeah, that's judgment. And remember, he is saying, I'm going to come in judgment in the glory of the Father, as I have demonstrated over and over and over again. And by the way, I even include a study of that in both of these books. Folks, this is so critically important. We cannot properly understand the New Testament doctrine of the coming of the Lord unless we understand the Old Testament doctrine of the coming of the Lord. Well, why is that? It is because the New Testament writers tell us that their expectation of the coming of the Lord, the judgment, resurrection, etc., was nothing other than what the Old Testament predicted was going to come. So when Jesus said, I'm going to come like my Father came, I'm going to judge like my Father judged, and that coming in judgment, once again, was to be as the Father had judged, and yet the Father had never, ever, ever judged the world by coming out of heaven in a visible, bodily, physical appearance. Folks, this has been so misunderstood down through the centuries. And yet, there are glimpses, even in the patristic writers. Eusebius said, Christ came in flaming fire in fulfillment of Zechariah 12 and Isaiah 66. Oh, but wait a minute. Oh, by the way, Eusebius said Christ came in AD 70 in fulfillment of those Old Testament prophecies. Okay. Well, 2 Thessalonians chapter One, the coming of Christ in flaming fire, taking vengeance, is taken directly from Isaiah 66. Listen, Eusebius obviously didn't connect the dots. That's what I'm attempting to do with you and for you. Okay, back to the point. Here in Matthew 16, 27 and 28, the Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels and shall reward, that's judgment, every man according to his works. And verily I say unto you, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Hey, listen, do yourself a favor. Tell you what I'm going to do. This is strictly for, this is strictly for my Now TV viewers. All right? So if you're on Facebook and you click the link to Now TV, but if you say, Don, I saw this offer on Now TV, I'll honor it. But you've got to tell me you watched Now TV. And here's what I mean. All right? I just mentioned this 2-book special. You're going to save almost $19 just by ordering these 2 books. However, for the rest of this month, this is good only for the rest of December 2024. So you got to hurry. All right? Christmas is coming up. It is a little over, 5 days away. Okay? In addition to these 2 books, when you order these 2 books, I will give you free of charge, no extra shipping, no extra cost whatsoever, a copy of my book, Can You Believe Jesus Said This?, which is an exegesis of Matthew 16, 27 and 28, in which I answer every objection I've ever heard to try to explain away that Jesus said he was coming back in the judgment of all men in the lifetime of those people. So, you get these 2 books for $30, no shipping, and you also get free of charge, Can You Believe Jesus Said This? This is only good for the rest of December 2024, U.S. orders only. Now, you see, if you ordered, Can You Believe Jesus Said This?, it would cost you $2.95 plus $5.95. $9 or $8. So you are saving right at $30. Fantastic deal. Remember, only the rest of December 2024, U.S. orders only, and only when you say that you saw the offer on Now TV. I know this is a very time-limited offer. It's just the way it is. I can't afford to do this kind of thing very often. Okay, back to the point. So we have Matthew 16, 27, 28. Jesus predicted his coming in judgment in the lifetime of the first century. It's unavoidable, it's undeniable. You cannot refute it. It's just simply a fact. So if you take the view that Jesus was predicting his coming out of heaven as a 5'5" Jewish man, then you are demanding that his prediction failed. You're demanding that the challenge of Christ failed. Now let's go to John chapter 5. Because that's really what pardon me, what today's video is all about. Remember what Jesus said. From henceforth, the Father judges no one. How had the Father judged before? How had Jesus seen the Father judge before? I've already explained it. From henceforth, the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all men, is that the same as all men in Matthew 16, 27? Of course it is. There's no controversy. There cannot be any controversy about this. So the Father has committed all judgment to the Son, that all men might honor the Son in the same manner, same way, and as they honor the Father. The Son can do nothing of himself, not as the incarnate Son, okay? But what he sees the Father do. So here's what we have. Matthew 16, 27, 28. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father in the judgment of all men in the same way the Father had come and in that generation. In John chapter 5, 21 through 23. The Son was going to come as he had seen the Father judge. Now, I have purposely left something out here. Okay? Boy, you got to catch this. When Jesus said, the Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels and shall reward every man, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a prediction of not only the judgment, it is a prediction of the resurrection. So let me ask you a question. In Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, in which Jesus said, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and shall sit on the throne of his glory, then all nations shall be gathered before him. The parable of the sheep and the goats. So here's the question. With the gathering of all nations before him, is that the time of the resurrection? I'm not aware of anyone that denies that. Okay, so what do we find? We have Matthew 16, 27, 28, the coming of the Son of Man and the glory of the Father with his angels to judge and reward all men in that generation 2,000 years ago. Matthew chapter 25, the Son of Man coming on the clouds with the angels in glory to sit on the throne of his glory. That's his coming in the kingdom of Matthew 16, 28. To judge all the nations. That's the resurrection. So we have Matthew 16, 27, 28. You have Matthew 25, 31 through 46, which is directly parallel to Matthew 16, 27, 28. That means that the judgment of all nations of Matthew 25, 31 and following had to have occurred in the first century, in the lifetime of Jesus' audience. Do you see a train coming? And then, in John chapter 5, Jesus didn't stop where I stopped, and I stopped on purpose. For as the Father, to continue in verse 22 and 23, for as the Father has life in himself, and he gives life to whom he wills, even so the Son. And what does the Son then say in John chapter 5, verse 24? The hour is coming, and now is, in which the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of Man and shall live, and believe, and those who believe in the one who sent him has everlasting life. They have, that's in the perfect tense, by the way. They have passed from death to life. Whoa, wait a minute. That's resurrection. Yes. That's what Jesus said he was going to do in judgment as he had seen the Father do. Now, a real quick diversion here. When Yahweh sent the 10 northern tribes into Assyrian captivity, he killed them. Hosea chapter 5 and 6, Isaiah 27, 9 and following. That was typological, but it's still true. When God sent Judah and Benjamin into Babylonian captivity. They were slain. They were dead. But as many, many, many scholars have noted, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm bringing this in so that you don't think, oh, Preston invented this or preterist invented this idea. No, no, no. John Watts, in his commentary on Isaiah in the Word Biblical Commentary series, N.T. Wright in his Jesus and the Victory of God, Brent Petrie in his book Jesus, Tribulation, and the End of Exile, and I could cite many, many, many more of scholars who say for Israel. By the way, John Levinson in his Resurrection is the hope of Israel. In Israel, to be separated from the land was to be dead. To be restored to the land was resurrection. Or to express it in another way. And Watts expresses it like this. There was literally an umbilical cord, not a physical umbilical cord, between Israel and the land. To be cut off from the land was to be cut off from life. To be cut off from the fellowship with God. Okay, so let me express it like this. Okay, to be cut off, to be alienated from God because of sin was to be dead. To be restored to the fellowship and the presence of God was resurrection. Now I'm going to have to develop this in Romans when we come back, after Christmas. But this, folks, is absolutely critical because people are too prone to think, oh, death, physical death, resurrection, biological resurrection, out of the dirt. That is not the way the ancient Jews thought. Don't let anyone convince you that that is the only view of resurrection, death and resurrection, that the ancient Jews had. I'm out of time. I'll pick this up. Merry Christmas to you. Take advantage of the special 3-book offer.